There's a reason so many people dread the night shift. It's not just the exhaustion, or the way time seems to stretch and warp under the harsh glare of flickering fluorescent lights. It's the silence, the kind that settles deep in your bones, broken only by the echo of your own footsteps down empty halls. When the world outside is asleep, the rules feel different. Shadows seem to move just out of sight, and every creak or distant thud makes your heart race. Maybe you've felt it too. That prickling sense that you not as alone as you think. Tonight I'm sharing 3 true stories from people who work the night shift and experienced things they still can't explain. After hearing what happened to them, you might never look at working late the same way again. If you think you're safe just because the doors are locked, think again. I never wanted to work the night shift. But when you're 19 and desperate for rent money, you take what you can get. That's how I ended up behind the counter at a 24-hour convenience store. The kind with flickering lights and a constant low hum from the refrigerators that never quite fades into the background. Most nights were uneventful. Just me, the glow of the register, and the occasional insomniac or trucker grabbing coffee and cigarettes. But there was always this feeling like the store was a little island floating in a sea of darkness, and I was the only one awake for miles. It was a Thursday, just after 2 a.m., when the weirdness started. I remember because the clock above the coffee machine was stuck at 2:17, and I kept glancing at it, willing the minutes to pass. The store was empty, except for the soft buzz of the lights and the distant whir of the slushy machine. I was restocking gum when the automatic doors slid open with a hiss. A man stepped inside. He was tall, wearing a faded gray hoodie pulled low over his face. Something about him made my skin crawl, though I couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way he moved, slow, deliberate, like he was trying not to make a sound. He didn't look at me, just drifted down the first aisle, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't help watching him out of the corner of my eye. He didn't pick anything up, didn't even pretend to browse. He just walked up and down the aisles, pausing every so often to stare at the shelves. The store felt colder, like someone had left the freezer door open. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he was just another late-night customer, but my heart was pounding. After a few minutes, he finally approached the counter. He set a single bottle of water down, not saying a word. I rang him up, trying to keep my voice steady. "That'll be $1.29. He didn't respond. He just stared at me, his face still hidden in shadow. I could see his hands, though long, pale fingers, nails bitten down to the quick. He slid a crumpled bill across the counter, and I handed him his change, careful not to touch him. He didn't leave. He just stood there, clutching the bottle, eyes fixed on me. The silence stretched on, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the hum of the lights. I cleared my throat. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" He shook his head, slow and deliberate. Then, finally, he turned and walked back toward the door. But instead of leaving, he stopped at the window and stared out into the parking lot. I followed his gaze, but there was nothing out there, just empty asphalt and the distant glow of a street lamp. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the reflection of the glass, I could see the man's face. It was just a blur, like someone had smeared his features with their thumb. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but when I looked again, it was the same. No eyes, no mouth, just a shifting, shadowy smear. I took a step back, heart hammering in my chest. The man turned, as if he'd heard something. And for a split second, I thought I saw another shape behind him in the reflection. Taller, darker, with long, spindly arms reaching toward the ceiling. I froze, unable to move or speak. The man walked out the door, and the automatic doors slid shut behind him. I rushed to the window, but the parking lot was empty. No sign of him, no footsteps, nothing. Just the hum of the lights and the ticking of the clock, still stuck at 2:17. I never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, when the store is empty and the lights flicker, I catch a glimpse of something in the reflection, something that shouldn't be there. And I wonder if he ever really left, or if he's still out there waiting for the next night shift to begin. Working the night shift alone does something to your mind. Every sound feels amplified. Every shadow seems to stretch a little longer. Start to wonder if you're really as alone as you think. But sometimes the real terror isn't what comes in from outside, it's what's already inside with you. And in some places, the building itself holds secrets you're better off not discovering. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a hospital, but after my dad got sick, I needed the extra money. The job was simple enough: mop the floors, empty the trash, keep to myself. But there was one part of the building everyone seemed to avoid: the basement. It was my responsibility, though, and I told myself I wasn't superstitious. Hospitals are full of stories, after all. People see what they want to see. The basement was nothing like the rest of the hospital. Upstairs, everything was bright and sterile, with a constant hum of activity. Down below, it was a maze of narrow hallways, low ceilings, and old storage rooms that hadn't been touched in years. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of bleach and something else, something musty, almost sweet, like rotting flowers. My first night down there, I tried to keep my head down and get through my checklist as fast as possible. The only sound was the squeak of my shoes on the linoleum and the distant thrum of the boiler. But as I turned the corner near the old laundry room, I heard it, a faint tapping like fingernails on metal. I stopped, heart pounding, and listened. The sound stopped too. I told myself it was just pipes or maybe a rat. But as I moved deeper into the basement, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of my vision, darting behind stacks of boxes and old gurneys. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my work, but every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement in the reflection of a window or a polished floor. Halfway through my shift, I was emptying a trash bin in the old records room when the lights flickered. For a split second, the room was plunged into darkness. When the lights came back on, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I dropped the trash bag and ran to the door, but it wouldn't budge. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my radio, but all I got was static. That's when I heard the whispering. It was so soft, I thought I was imagining it at first. A woman's voice, just on the edge of hearing, repeating the same word over and over. Help. Help. I pressed my ear to the door, but the voice seemed to be coming from inside the room, not outside. I spun around, searching the shadows, but there was no one there. The temperature dropped, and I could see my breath in the air. The lights flickered again, and in that brief moment of darkness, I saw her, a woman in a hospital gown, standing in the far corner, her hair hanging over her face. She was reaching out to me, her fingers twisted and bruised. When the lights snapped back on, she was gone. I finally managed to wrench the door open and stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. The whispering faded, but I could still feel her presence, like a cold hand pressed against my back. I finished my shift in a daze, barely remembering how I got through the rest of my tasks. After that night, I tried to avoid the basement as much as possible, but sometimes when I'm mopping the floors upstairs, I hear the elevator ding and see the doors open to an empty car, or I'll catch a glimpse of a woman in a hospital gown disappearing around a corner. I don't know who she was or what happened to her, but I know she's still down there, waiting for someone to listen. Every time I pass the basement stairs, I wonder if the haunting is really over, or if it's just waiting for the next person to come along. There's something about haunted places that lingers long after you've left. The feeling that eyes are following you, even when you're alone. Some buildings never let go of their secrets, and some shadows never really fade. But if you thought a haunted hospital basement was terrifying, just wait until you hear what happened to a security guard on his very first night shift. This one still keeps me up at night. I'd worked security before, but never at a place like this. The warehouse was massive, an endless grid of concrete and steel, surrounded by nothing but empty fields and a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. My first night on the job, the supervisor handed me a ring of keys and a radio, then left with a warning: stay alert. This place gets weird after midnight. I laughed it off. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the last of the day shift clocked out, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The warehouse was silent except for the occasional groan of settling metal and the distant hum of the ventilation system. My footsteps echoed as I made my rounds, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The security office was a cramped room lined with monitors, each one showing a different angle of the endless aisles and loading docks. I settled in, telling myself it would be an easy night. Just me, the cameras, and the steady tick of the wall clock. Around 1 a.m., I noticed something strange on one of the monitors. Pallet in section D12 shifted just a little, as if someone had nudged it. I leaned closer, squinting at the grainy footage, but saw nothing else. Probably just the building settling, I told myself. But then, a few minutes later, another camera flickered. This time, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting between the shelves, too quick to make out. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out to check. The aisles were cold and smelled faintly of oil and dust. My radio crackled with static as I called out, "Is anyone there?" No answer. I walked the length of D12, shining my light into every corner, but found nothing out of place. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Back in the office, I tried to focus on the monitors, but the sense of unease only grew. At 2:03 a.m., an alarm blared from the loading dock. I jumped, heart pounding, and fumbled for the radio. "Control, this is Unit 1. I've got an alarm at the loading dock. Investigating now." The only response was a burst of static, followed by a low, distorted voice that sounded almost like my own, echoing back at me. "Don't go." I froze, staring at the radio. The voice faded, replaced by silence. I told myself it was just interference, but my hands were shaking as I made my way to the loading dock. The overhead lights flickered, casting long warped shadows across the concrete floor. The big metal doors were closed and locked, but as I approached, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A set of wet footprints, leading from the door into the darkness between the shelves. I followed the prints, my breath fogging in the cold air. The warehouse felt impossibly large, the rows of pallets stretching on forever. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement just ahead, a flash of a pale face, the edge of a dark coat. My radio crackled again, and this time the voice was clearer, but wrong. Like it was being played backward. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around, shining my light in every direction, but saw nothing. The footprints ended abruptly in the middle of an empty aisle. I stood there, heart hammering, when I heard footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, echoing off the concrete. I turned, expecting to see someone, anyone, but the aisle was empty. Suddenly, every monitor in the security office flickered to life at once, the screens filled with static and distorted images. I ran back, stumbling over my own feet, and stared in horror as the camera showed a figure standing in every section of the warehouse, tall, thin, face obscured by shadow. No matter which camera I looked at, the figure was always there, always watching. The radio crackled one last time, and I heard my own voice whisper, "Run." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted for the exit, keys jangling, breath coming in ragged gasps. As I reached the front doors, I glanced back at the monitors. Every screen showed the same thing, the figure now standing right behind the security office chair, where I'd been sitting just moments before. I made it outside, gulping in the cold night air, and didn't stop running until I reached my car. I quit the next day, left the keys on the supervisor's desk, and never looked back. But sometimes late at night, I dream about that warehouse, the endless aisles, the flickering lights, and the watcher who never blinks. And I wonder if somewhere in the dark, he's still waiting for the next guard to come along. There's something about the night shift that changes the way you see the world. Maybe it's the silence, or the way shadows seem to move when you're the only one awake. Or maybe it's the knowledge that, when the rest of the world is sleeping, you're left alone with whatever secrets the darkness wants to share. The stories you've just heard aren't just about haunted places or strange encounters. They're about the fear that creeps in when you're tired, vulnerable, and completely alone. And sometimes the scariest part isn't what you see, but what you can't explain. If you've ever worked late and felt that chill run down your spine or caught something out of the corner of your eye that shouldn't have been there, you're not alone. I want to hear your stories. Share them in the comments below. Who knows? Maybe your experience will be the next one to keep someone up at night. So the next time you find yourself working the night shift, remember, it isn't for everyone. And sometimes, it's not just the living you have to worry about. Sleep tight.